Okay, so I was trying to explain that the project manager has a key role to play in making sure that there is performance, in project delivery. Okay, this is very, very important. All right. Okay. So, okay. So what does this mean? It means that we all have individual responsibilities to get better at ourselves as project managers. Let's get better at ourselves as project managers. Let's get better at ourselves as project managers. When we get back to our workplace or our workplaces, there should be a remarkable difference between you that have come for project management and the person that have not come for project management. There should be a remarkable difference. And the remarkable difference is going to be based on the things you've understood, the things that have gotten to you, the things that you now practice as a project manager. This is very, very important. All right, this is very, very important. Our differences in how we're able to deliver performance is now going to be a personal function of how far we're able to go in improving ourselves, in making the most of our learning processes, and making the most of our experiences as they come by. All right. So why we say that the project management has triple constraint, of course, those triple constraints are the major constraint. They are not just the only constraint, just that the other constraints are subsumed in these three major constraints. And of course, the three major constraints of scope, schedule, and budget or resources, they are all tilted towards performance, towards quality, towards quality, towards quality. Okay, towards quality. So how you're able to maneuver or manipulate your scope, manipulate your schedule, manipulate your cost or your finance or your budget, how you're able to manipulate them is going to be a function of the quality of understanding you have in terms of knowledge and in terms of experience. And it's also going to be based on the quality of people you have in your team, because this is very, very important. And of course, you as a project manager, when it comes to recruitment into your project team, you must be part of that. You must be part of that so that you can be able to easily find the kind of people you need in your team, so that you don't get people that will end up bringing lacks to your projects. Okay, you don't want to have that. All right, you don't want to have that. Okay, so that being said, should there be any question for me, I'll be glad to take that. If you have any question, feel free to ask me, send me your questions, ask me your questions. Like I said, by tomorrow we'll be officially rounding off this section. And then by the first week of May, we are starting with the project lead project management. And like I said, don't stop at Capm. Just make sure you continue. Make sure you, and now that we are giving the discounts, make sure you continue, complete your program, and then move on. Okay, don't stop at the point. Put yourself under constraint. Okay, so we have the budget constraint now. Okay, and then I remember one of the things I also told him. I told him yesterday. He said in his simulations, they established that the project constraints are iterative. And I said at PhD level, if you just establish that statement that way, it might not just be a very perfect way to place it. Yes, when we teach them, we tell you that they are iterative, but there are also project management development methodology. So the methodology you use has its own significance on iteration and perhaps the level of iteration that you want to run. Okay, and I called his attention back to methodologies like waterfall. If you're using a waterfall, we agree that the scope, the time, the budget, they are well defined from the beginning. So iteration might not be that much, we may not have much flexibility in the project plan and project implementation. But when you look at project methodologies like iteration, yes, if you call it iteration, yes, then that means we are open. Iteration simply means we are open to flexibility, we are open to accommodating changes as they come by. And then we also look at other methodologies like the agile methodologies or the adaptive methodologies. And then you look at hybrid methodologies. So the methodology you use will determine constraints. Now, going back to me asking you to place yourself under constraint to complete your project certified lead project management course. Now, if you look at that particular program now, you as a person looking at it, your constraint, to some of us, our constraint might not be the finance. To another person, the constraint might be the time. Another person, the constraint might not be time. The constraint might be the scope. So when we look at constraints, it becomes on the function of trade-offs. One thing about constraints is that you can have all. So for instance, in the project constraints, you have for scope, you want to have the best scope that will give you the best quality, that scope. For schedule, you want to do the project faster. And for budget, you want to do the budget, you want a budget that is cost-friendly. It is going to be cheaper, faster, and the best quality. That's what you want. But in most cases, it doesn't always come that way. There must always be some trade-offs. So it could be more expensive, but at a higher quality. It could be at a faster time, but with increased costs. So there must be some level of trade-offs. Sometimes it may not always play at the way of cheaper, faster, and the best quality. It mustn't always play that way. And that is where the trade-offs come to play. So with all of what we've learned, remember that each project is unique, and you must tailor each project. You must tailor each project to meet its defined needs, its defined expectation. So by tailoring, you should be able to know which one to trade off. Are we going to trade off time? Are we going to trade off costs? Are we going to trade off scope? What exactly are we going to trade off? Okay, what are we going to trade off? Okay, now by saying trade off, let me make it a little simpler. Trade off simply means finding the most critical aspect of the project and then the less critical ones. So you are doing what we call prioritization. So which one should have the highest priority? Is it the cost? Is it the time? Is it the scope? Now, if I ask the question natively, somebody could just pick up something randomly, but your picking of that thing is just based on your level of information at the moment. But by the time you go to the field, and by the time you begin to interact with your stakeholders, interact with your project owners on which they consider the most important, not that they might tell you that scope is more important or schedule is more important or cost is more important, but the information they give you. Remember, we dealt with scope management, and one of the things we dealt with in scope management is collecting requirements of stakeholders. And of course, when we collected requirements, by collecting requirements, we meant that we were able to understand what the stakeholder actually wanted. So we did a whole lot of data gathering and then data analysis, and then we had different tools and techniques we used to confirm and agree with the stakeholder that yes, this is really what he or she wanted, right? And then from that information given, we were able to develop correct scope statements. We defined the scope, so we developed correct scope statements, which we also agreed. And then in that scope definition, we were able to make sure that there is a relationship, a path, okay, so let me say an accurate relationship, an effective relationship between what the stakeholder actually wanted and what we have defined as the scope of the project. So that brought us to what we now dealt with as a requirements traceability matrix, okay, to be able to ensure that there is an alignment between the scope defined and the expectations of the stakeholder. So in doing all of this, all we wanted to do is find out which ones will be traded off, which one will become a trade-off. So by collecting requirements and defining the scope, there is already a direction for trade-off. There is already a direction for prioritization. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. Okay, this is very, very important. And please, I am begging you in the name of God, I don't want this class to be like a storytelling class. If by whatsoever means there's something you don't understand, feel free to ask me, okay? And I don't just want you to end up with just a certificate that will give you promotion, but will not tell you, or will not build your capacity to be able to do your work. That's not what we're dealing with here. We want to, first of all, understand concepts, understand application, understand standards, understand the place of our personal subjectivity and objectivity in all of what we're doing. So project management, I'll repeat it again, is more of practice and standards. More of practice and standards. So all the knowledge you're gathering is towards implementing standards and towards practicing. Okay, all right, so let's look at project schedule management. Project schedule management. So the learning objectives here is that by the end of this class, we should be able to discuss project schedule management processes and then practice project schedule development. So there are just two things we want to do here, but it will roughly take us 2 hours to get this done. So let's get this very fast. By introduction, project schedule management is all about planning, developing, monitoring, and controlling the project timeline to ensure tasks are completed on time and within the designated time frame. This is all we want to achieve in project schedule management. Now, what are the key processes involved here? We have developing of the schedule management plan. Then we look at defining activities, we look at sequencing activities, look at estimating activity durations, developing schedule, and then controlling schedule. Now, when we get to the lead project management professional, the advanced stage of this course, we'll still repeat some of these things, but much more will be delving into them deeper and deeper, much more with mathematical understanding and practical implication in our projects, okay, so that we can add more to our competency. All right. Now, what are the benefits of effective schedule management? Number one, you have improved project predictability. Now, with schedule management, you remember we said that projects are temporary. We have defined start time and we have defined close time. Okay, so projects are temporary. Now, with effective schedule management plan in place, we can predict when projects could end by the time we know when it will start. Okay, and we have some software you can use for this. So that's also one of the things we're going to be dealing with in the advanced level. We will practically look at software that we will be using. Okay, of course, we understand that everything about professionalism, there must be an IT inclusion. There must be an IT inclusion. So we'll be learning that also. And then we have enhanced resource utilization. When you know clear schedule, what to do, when to do it, okay, then you also know how to allocate resources effectively. Then you have reduced risks. So with your schedule in place, your schedule comprises of your tasks, which is a function of your scope, and then it comprises of the time frame for which the project or the task will be done. And then to some great extent, it also comprises of the resources allocated to the tasks to be performed. Now, by the time you look at the scope component, the task component of the schedule, it can easily tell you where to expect risks, where to expect uncertainties, as the case may be. So it helps you to now deal with risks proactively. All right. Then it also has increased stakeholder satisfaction. Increased stakeholders with an effective schedule management, stakeholders are satisfied. Now remember that project schedule is an estimate, an adjustment might be needed as the project progresses. Communication is key in your whole process of project scheduling. Okay, and then keep your stakeholders informed about potential schedule changes and their impact where necessary. Now, let's look at the first process of project schedule management, which is develop schedule management plan. Here, we'll look at the inputs, we'll look at the tools and techniques, and we'll look at the outputs for each of these. Now, for the develop schedule management plan, it sets the foundation for managing the schedule. It defines how the schedule will be created, monitored, and controlled. So it's more like defining your policies and your standards for schedule management. Now, under the inputs, you have your project scope statement. Your project scope statement has been well defined all the way from your project scope management. So one of your outputs from your project scope management is project scope statement, which is a formal document that defines the approved project scope. So it gives you a hint on what the project scope baseline is all about. Okay, it includes your major deliverables and the things that are excluded in the project. Okay, a clear understanding of scope is essential for creating a realistic schedule. Okay, because your schedule, first of all, has to comprise, there must be an importation of your scope to your schedule before you could begin. All right. If you ask me, I would say the first input actually is your scope statement, because that your scope statement will go on to give you your scope baseline, which goes on to give you your work breakdown structure, and all of those things are needed to carefully define your project schedule management plan. Now, the next input there is your organizational process assets, your OPAs, which are your reusable templates, your policies, your procedures, your lessons learned, okay, and all of that. You need them to be able to adapt your project schedule. So let's assume you did a project on rural electrification. You've done that in a particular local government before, and then you're given another contract to do the same project in another local government. You could pick your project schedule from the one you've done before to serve as a template for the one you will do moving forward. All right, so that becomes your OPA. And then the lessons you learned from the previous project will become invaluable to the current project that is currently ongoing. Now you have your work breakdown structure, which is also a derivative of your project scope management. Okay, so it is the hierarchical structure breakdown of your project deliverables into smaller, more manageable components. A well-defined WBSF identify activities needed for each component and estimate their durations. So one of the things that your WBS does is that it breaks your job into the most manageable levels. So from your project, it breaks it down to phases. From phases, it breaks down to milestones. From there, it breaks it down to tasks. And from breaking it down to that, we further break it down to smaller work packages, just to enhance understanding and manageability. All right. Then another input you need there is your calendar information. So your calendar information is very, very important. Anytime you want to design a project schedule, it's important you have access to the calendar information. Now you're not in charge of the calendar, as it were. So if you ask me, I would say calendar is more like your EF, your enterprise environmental factors. So what are the public holidays like? Will your project be involved in public holiday? What are the other availability of your teammates within the project duration? Okay, you want to check all those things and be sure among the working days, are there ones that will be exempted? Are there information that could stop you from using the calendar the way it's ought to be. For instance, in Nigeria, as it were now, going to the southeast of Nigeria to do any project, you know that Monday is off completely. So you take your Monday to Saturday. So you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Okay, if you want to work on a Sunday, you can go ahead and work on a Sunday. But on Monday, you don't work there. Now, and that's the calendar information, and you must put that into consideration. And if you don't take this calendar information seriously and you want to go into a project in that kind of project environment, now you will end up running into risk, which could have been avoided by clear calendar information. On the tools and techniques, you have the expert judgment and you have the scheduling software. Well, we already understand the need to involve experts in the things we do as project managers. And then for the scheduling software, you have different software you could use for your project management, okay? Some of them, we use them to develop Gantt charts, we use them to develop critical parts, critical chains, and then some of them, we use them to develop budgets, okay? As we go on in this class, by the time we get to level 2 or the advanced level, you will find out that your project can be done in a twinkle of an eye just by imputing. And I'm not saying artificial intelligence. I'm talking about some software you could use. Your project could be broken down, of course, with the use of AI now. Your project can easily be broken down, but that does not mean you shouldn't look at the project to be sure that it's giving you the necessary deliverables. Okay, your project can easily be broken down, and then you have your budget raised, you have everything raised, just with few inputs, and then you have everything processed. At the same time, the usefulness of these tools to you will be on the function of how you're able to give yourself to develop yourself in these software. Okay. Then on the output, we have your schedule management plan, which is a formal document that outlines the approach to managing your project schedule. It details how activities will be defined, sequenced, estimated, and controlled. Then you have the level of schedule detailing. You have the level of schedule detailing, which also goes a long way to telling you how the project will be detailed, to what extent. Are we just going to break it down to the phases and we'll leave it there? Or are we going to break it down to work packages? So that will also be defined. Okay, this defines the desired level of detail for the project schedule, considering factors like project complexity and stakeholder needs. Now, the next process we'll look at, is the define activities. Define activities. The define activities. Here we'll also look at the input. We look at the tools and techniques, and we look at the what? The outputs. Now, for the defined activities, it involves identifying all the specific tasks required to complete the project deliverables. All the specific tasks required to complete the project deliverable. All the specific tasks required to complete the project deliverable. That's for defining of the activities. Now, let's move on and see what will happen. Now, on the input, you have your project scope statement, which we've spoken so much about. We have your work breakdown structure, which we've also spoken so much about. We've talked about, we also have your enterprise environmental factors. Now, remember, I just spoke about the calendar, the project calendar, and I gave a typical example of it being an EF, all right? So you take example of what is happening in your environment. In the eastern part of Nigeria, you don't go saying you're running a project there on a Monday as it is now. That will be to your own detriment. Okay, so you want to check out for all of the policies, regulations, and resource availability for your launch out. Then you have your OPA, still talking about your templates, your reusable templates, your policies, your schedules, your schedule templates, network diagram templates that you can use to proceed in defining your activities. Now, the tools and techniques, you have decomposition. Decomposition simply means breaking up, breaking down. So you can break down your projects into smaller manageable units, okay, into smaller manageable tasks. And then you have your brainstorming. Brainstorming is also important in defining activities, because by brainstorming, you would have known which of the projects will be overlapping, or which of the tasks will be overlapping, which of them will be sequential, which of them will be iterative. You would have known that through brainstorming, okay? And then you have your work sampling. With the work sample, you can further gain insight on how your project should look like, the project output, how it should look like. Then you have your analogous estimating, which is similar to using information from previous projects and using it to make decision on your current project. So you could also consider that as more of historical relationships, okay, between past projects and present projects. On the output, you have your activity list, which is a comprehensive list of all individual tasks required to complete the project deliverables. Now, when we look at work breakdown structure, we look at it from the point of the projects, the phases, then you look at the tasks. But in the project activity or the activity list, we go further to make sure that we define all of those components in the WBS to the point of understanding, okay? We define them to make sure that everybody understands them, okay? Then you have your activity attributes, which is optional. It provides additional details about each of the activities, such as estimated durations, resources required, and predecessor or successor relationship. Now, by the time we get to level 2 and we are back on schedule management, and we begin to look at critical path methods and critical chain methods, we'll understand more the relationship of predecessors and successors. And we'll also try to engage mathematical concepts in all of this. So we also go ahead and understand the principles of float, lag, lead, free floats, and all of that, okay? And like I said, that advanced level is not a level you want to miss, no matter what. You don't want to miss it. And I don't want you to take 1 year before you come back. Just make sure you continue and complete that course immediately, so that you know 2024, you devoted it to getting quality knowledge, skills, competencies, and certification in project management. Now, the next activity we deal with there is the sequence activities. Now that you've understood the activities through brainstorming, through templates and all of that, you can easily now prioritize, you can easily place the activities where they belong to, okay? So let's look at the input tools and techniques for the sequencing. The sequencing of activities involves arranging the identified activities in a logical order, considering dependencies between them. When we say dependencies between them, also by the time we get to the advanced level, we have time dependencies, where we look at start to start dependencies, start to finish dependencies, finish to start dependencies, and finish to finish dependencies. Those are more like the dependencies. Then you also have phase relationships, where you look at sequential relationships, overlapping relationships, and then iterative relationships, okay? And then these dependencies have their own role to play in sequencing the activities, and they have their own role to play in affecting the schedule, okay? Sequencing of the activities, if not well done, can elongate your schedule beyond reasonable doubt or beyond reasonable imagination. And then with good understanding of the tools and techniques also, you can crash your project schedule to also unimaginable depth. But all of this is going to be on a function of how you're able to understand the knowledge, experiences, the skills, and all of those things available to you, and being able to use them in project management. Now, for the sequence activities, the input will have the activity list, which is a comprehensive list of all the individual tasks, okay, that have been well defined. You have your project scope statement, which gives a detailed definition of what the stakeholder needs in that project. And then you have your work breakdown structure, which gives the breakdown of the expected deliverables in the project. Okay. On the tools and techniques, we have the precedence diagramming method. Just as the name is precedence, precedence simply means in order of priority. All right. So in the precedence diagramming method, you have use of flowcharts, okay, like flowcharts with arrows to show you what is happening with your project, okay, with your project. So you have projects flowcharts. You have it might not necessarily be chart. It could also give you statistical tools, other statistical tools, like your could be your graphs, it could be your bar chart, it could be your table, provided you understand what it is. Okay, but more often than not, your the interpretation of your precedence diagram can be explained in tables, in charts, and whatever. But more often than not, it is more like a flow chart. So it gives you arrow. The arrow simply gives you direction of how the project is going or how the project will go. Now you have the activity list ranking. So still more of a prioritization. By the time you rank your activities, you have the high impact, moderate impact, and the low impact activities. And of course, if you're ranking them in order of urgency, you have the most urgent, moderately urgent, and not urgent. If you're ranking them in order of influence, most influence, the one that is having the most influence, moderate influence. So it's left for you to know which ranking you give to your activity list. Okay. And then you have your critical path method. I think I've already explained that in a way, but this technique identifies the longest sequence of activities that must be completed on time for the project to finish on schedule. The longest, when you look at your precedence network diagram, okay, your precedence network diagram or your precedence diagramming method, okay, by the time you look at your precedence network, the outcome or the output of your PDM is your PND, which is the precedence network diagram. Your PND, precedence network diagram. So by the time you look at your precedence network diagram, you have different parts, Some of them are critical, some of them are not critical. But what you want to do is to find the critical part itself, which is the longest sequence of activities, okay, that will actually provide the shortest way to completing the project. It is the longest part, the longest sequence of activities, but when you complete them on time and on budget, you will end up completing the project as proposed, okay? The output expected on your sequence activities, I've already spoken about your precedence network diagram. So your precedence network diagram is a flowchart of how your sequence of activities are going. So inside your precedence network diagram, you have your critical parts, okay, that you can easily trace. Okay. You have your parts, then you have your critical part inside it. Okay. Then you have your schedule model. Your schedule model, this can be a computer-based model that reflects the sequence activities and their duration. So imagine using your project management software to create a digital schedule for your place production, incorporating the sequence tasks and their estimated durations. So you could have that. Then the next activity we'll look at is the estimate activity durations. Estimate activity duration. In your estimating of activity duration, just as you have defined the activity, you have sequenced the activity. Remember that you sequence the activity based on your understanding of the defined activities. Okay, and of course, those defined activities came from our understanding of the project scope statement. It came from our understanding of our WBS, our work breakdown structure, and our scope baseline. So we were able to define activities from there to the point of understanding. And then from the defined activity lists, we're able to now prioritize. We ranked, we had them in order of precedence. the way we wanted them to go. And then now we want to estimate the duration for each of those activities. How long will it take? What is the duration? Okay. Please note, there are all mathematical expressions to all of this. And in case you are one of those people that used to be afraid of mathematics, you don't need to be afraid, because there are things you do daily. Okay. The formulas that we will be introducing by the time we get to the advanced level or the mid level, the formulas, they are things we use every day. So by understanding of the practice, it's easier for you to know what the formulas are up to. Okay, so I don't need you to be scared when you hear me talk about mathematics or mathematical expressions. Don't be scared about it. There are things, it won't pass plus, minus, division, multiplication. Okay, it won't pass that. But they are things that, if we're able to lay good hold on them, they will help us make the most of our projects. Okay, make the most of our projects. Now, this involves approximating time required to complete each identified activity. Now, let's move on faster. In the estimate activity duration, you have the activity list, the input, you have the activity list, you have your work breakdown structure, you have your OPAs, you have your calendar information, you have your expert judgment. You need all of this to be able to estimate the activities. Okay. The activity list gives you the defined activities. The work breakdown structure tells you the expected deliverables. The OPAs tells you what is available for us to be able to define this. Okay. The calendar information tells you the time available for you per week, per the duration of the project. Okay. The expert judgment further gives you insight on what is expected of you in the project. Okay, this is very, very important. On the tools and technique, we have the expert judgment, which we've already mentioned as an input also. They have your analogous estimates or estimating, where you look at historical information to draw hypotheses or make decisions, all right? They have your parametric estimating. Why your analogous estimating is more like using historical information. So you could look at it like a trend analysis, trend analysis. The parametric is more like statistical relationships. So in the statistical relationship, that means data must be collected, data must be analyzed, and there must be correlation. We can go ahead and do correlation analysis. Correlation analysis will now be dependent on the variables that existed on the either sides of the project that we are playing on. On this other side of the project that has been done before, and this other side of the project that I want to do, what variables existed, what relationship can be established among them. So this is very, very important. Then you go on to bottom-up estimating, just like the name is, bottom-up, from bottom to top. So what this means is that you could build in blocks, smaller blocks. So you add blocks upon blocks. With bottom-up estimating, you're able to break down the activity into smaller tasks, smaller units, and then you're able to estimate those smaller units. And then you begin to sum them up to give you the bigger level of the project. I hope you understand it. So a project is, let's say you say construction of a 3-bedroom flat, for instance. You cannot just close your eyes and say this project will take us 3 months. No, you have to first of all break down the project. Until the point is, get to the point of saying digging for foundation will take us 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, as the case may be, or perhaps foundation will take us 3 days. Laying of blocks will take us 14 days, or as the case may be. Roofing and superstructure will take us number of days. Electrical fittings and finishing will take us this. Painting and that. All of this, you have broken your project into smaller units, and you begin to estimate those projects on time based on for the fact that you've broken them into smaller units, and then you are able to allocate time to them. So bottom-up estimating is good. Okay. We also have another process that is called the top-down estimating, but we don't often recommend that. Top-down estimating is an example of analogous estimating. A top-down estimate is an example of analogous estimate. A top-down is this project. The last time we did it, it was 3 months. in Abeokuta. Now that we are doing it in Ota, let's take it 3 months also. That is top down. You're using already established data to make decision on the project, and it's from top to down. So you say it's 3 months, and then having given 3 months, is now left for your project team to now know how to break down the 3 months to fit into the tasks involved in the project. Now on the output, we have the activity durations. Okay, so now what you have is an activity list, a defined sequenced activity list with an added duration for each of the tasks. Now let's look at develop schedule. Let's look at develop schedule very quickly. Let's look at develop schedule very quickly, and then we'll begin to think of going into a breakout session. The input tools and techniques and outputs needed. Now, on the develop schedule, it involves using the defined activities, their durations, and their dependencies to create a comprehensive schedule. Okay. Now, develop schedule is where all the previous planning comes together to create the project's comprehensive timeline. Now, imagine creating a detailed timeline for your place production, outlining the start and the end dates for each of the activities. Now, the input will need your activity list, activity attributes, your WBS, your calendar information, and your schedule management plan. These are the things you need in the input for you to be able to develop your schedule. Now, on the tools and techniques, you need the scheduling software. If you know how to use Excel, that would be great. Do you remember one of the things we said as the skills of a project manager? We said analytical skills and business intelligence skills. And I remember encouraging us that as much as you can, try to label on courses like data analytics, data science, and all of that. So when I talk about project scheduling software, one of the ones we can use is actually something as good as your Excel. Okay, you can use Excel to build your Gantt chart. However, there are well-defined software for project management. But if you don't have access to those things, you can use your software like your Excel to build your project dashboard, to do your visualization, to do your schedule, to do your budget and everything. And we are going to take the time to deal with all of this in the advanced level. So get ready, get prepared, and don't miss out. And I'm taking the time to remind us of this because by the time we go on to, I think our next class will be in July. Yeah, our next class will be in July. By the time you come back in July, advanced project management or lead project management will be running as high as 250,000 naira and well over $300 by the time we get to that point. Okay, so it's good to make use of it now that we still have the April-June window or March-June window where we are giving discount. So I don't want you to come paying in volumes there. But if you want to wait till July, why not? If you want to wait till October and December and next year. But just know that the price will definitely not be the same. Then you have your critical path method also. You could use the critical path method to deal with this. Now you have your develop schedule, the output, you have your project schedule, which is now a well-defined schedule that comprises of well-defined activity, sequenced activity with estimates of what to do. And then you have your policies and procedures and standards on how the schedule, project schedule will be used. Okay, then you have your baseline schedule, which is the approved schedule that you're going to be using. Okay. And then you have your control schedule, which I believe is the final on this series. Control schedule. Control schedule. In the control schedule, the input tools and techniques, just as the name is, control schedule. It is an iterative process. It is an ongoing process all through your project's life cycle. You keep on controlling your schedule so that you don't fall off the variation or the deviation won't be too high. This ongoing process monitors the project's progress against the baseline schedule and takes corrective action to address any delays. Imagine it as monitoring progress through your play's production and taking corrective actions to avoid delays or ensure the opening night happens on time. Now, in your input, you need your project schedule, because here your project schedule is now what you're going to be using to know how your project will be monitored enough. Okay. And then you have your project management plan. Yes, your project schedule is the component of the project management plan. But remember, your project management plan defines the standards of how your project, the components of the project planning will go. Okay, then you have your work performance data to tell you where you are per time. And then you have the change request or the change orders to know how adjustments will be managed in the project. In the tools and techniques, we have performance reviews, regular performance reviews to make sure that we are on track. And then you have variance analysis to make sure that we are not completely deviating. And of course, one of the tools you can use in variance analysis is what we call the end value management, which compares actual progress against the planned schedule to identify variances, be it positive or negative. And also there are mathematical expressions to EVM. And when we get to, in EVM, we have EVM in schedule management, we have EVM in cost management. Okay, so we have what we call the schedule variance, we have what we call the cost variance. So between all of those calculations, and when I say do calculations, just note that it is things that we're already doing. Okay, there are things we're already doing, but we want to do it more professionally. If you want to be a professional, then you have to be a professional to the core. If you want to be a technician, that's not a problem. But if you want to be a professional, you have to understand how your profession really works. Okay. And these are, when we come back to level 2 or the advanced, the lead management, project management professional, then this is where we'll be looking at those with clear examples, with clear case studies. We'll be looking at them so that you can easily deal with them when you see them in your office, in your workplace, and you'll become a very good advisor. Okay, very good advisor. Of course, by the time you are done with your advanced level and you do your induction, you will be given an accreditation as a project management consultant. So having completed level, the associate level, the lead level, and you do your membership induction, you will be entitled to project management consultant certification. My wife was asking me last night. She asked me a question last night. She asked me, say, what's the difference between project management professional and project management consultant? I didn't want to answer her, but because I'm a project manager and also a project consultant, I needed to answer her. Now, when you say you are a project management professional, what it simply means is that you've gone through all of the trainings, learnings, and you have written your exams, you've passed. Okay, that gives you the certification of project management profession. Okay, what of a project management consultant? Project management consultant is the person who has gone through the learning, written the exam, passed, and the person has practiced and has been confirmed to be a good advisory to project management endeavors. So with project management consulting or project management consultant, you will be able to say, okay, yes, I've done this, I've done that, and I have the capacity to advise, I have the capacity to supervise, I have the capacity to monitor projects. Okay. So when you come for your induction, which is going to be just a one-day encounter, you will take a course on project management consulting and then how to launch fully into project management environment. Okay. All right. Then we also have the trend analysis as part of our tools and techniques. Just like as I mentioned, in an analogous estimating, in trend analysis, you're just analyzing data, you're monitoring how the information has been going, okay, how progress has been advancing, and then you're able to say, okay, this is you are understanding trends. Okay, you're reviewing to understand trends. On the output, we have your cost performance report, you have your updates to project documents like your project management plan, okay, your project schedule and others. And then you have your change request log, recording the ones that have been approved, the ones that are unapproved. okay, as the case may be. All right. Now, on your cost performance report, this might include sessions on schedule performance, documenting variances from the baseline schedule and recommending corrective actions. Imagine reports outlining delays in rehearsals, set construction, or marketing compared to the planned schedule. They might propose solutions like adjusting rehearsal schedules, allocating additional resources for set construction, or revising marketing campaign timelines. Okay, whatever thing it is, your cost performance is to check per time. Where are we? Are we above cost baseline, or are we below cost baseline, or are we on point? Now, in summary, by effectively using these tools, inputs, techniques, you can proactively manage project progress and ensure the project adheres to planned schedule. All right, before we go into our class activity, do I have any question, any comment, any contribution? Please feel free to unmute, and then let me have your question. Questions, comment, contributions, please go ahead and ask me now so that we can deal with it before we progress. Any question? Question, comment, contribution? Your mic is open. Go ahead and ask me. I'm waiting for your question. I'm waiting for your comment. Waiting for your contribution. So if you're watching this on YouTube, or you came across it on YouTube, just make sure you drop your comment in the comment section, and then we'll be there to respond to you accordingly. Okay. Comment, questions. Okay, so if there are no questions, if there are no comments, then I'm going to ask you my own question. The question is, what have you learned in project schedule management? What have you learned in project schedule management? So let me hear from you. Okay, so I have Benedictus in class, I have Sajem in class, I have Seth in class. Dr. Wilfred is not in class today. Okay. So let me have, in one sentence, not a conjugative sentence, not a complex sentence, just in one simple sentence, what have you learned in project schedule management? I'm waiting. I trust you can still hear me.
Yeah,
Please
hello.
kindly confirm that you can hear me loud and clear by typing 1 in the chat room. If you can hear me loud and clear, please kindly confirm by typing 1 in the chat room. If you can hear me loud and clear, please kindly confirm by typing 1 in the chat room. All right.
Yeah, hello. Hello.
So can you hear me? Okay, Benedictus, please go ahead,
Yeah, hello.
sir.
Oh, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud.
Okay. Thank you very much. One thing I've learned is that a project schedule management follows key processes. There are key processes that project schedule management follows. And as a project manager, there is a need to have an understanding of these key processes and develop that schedule management according to these processes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Benedictus, for. Okay, so I have Mr. Chibike and Honorable Sajem. Please share with us briefly, what have you learned? Our time is running so fast. I trust you don't have any issue or muting. Kindly unmute, let's hear from first. Okay, so if I'm not hearing from you, then I have to proceed very fast because of our time. Now, let's quickly take a look at this case study, and then we'll use it to We use it as a practice question. We'll look at this case study and then we'll use it as a practice question. Class activity, revamping the museum gift shop. Schedule management, a case study. Introduction. The local history museum is planning this gift shop. The current shop is outdated and doesn't reflect the museum's recently expanded exhibits. The goal is to create a shop experience that complements the museum's offerings and generates additional revenue. This project requires effective project schedule management to ensure the time for the upcoming tourist season, which is a peak revenue for the museum. Now, a new layout for the gift shop space, source new merchandise aligned with the museum's like painting, lighting, and fixtures, develop and promote the new gift shop, and then train staff and sales techniques. And then you have grand opening is their proposed project scope. Or the challenges are limited budget for innovations and merchandise acquisition, the tourist season, reliance on external vendors for renovation work and merchandise supply. Now, using the schedule management plan for this management plan. And I'm going to give us just 15 minutes, 15 minutes to come up with something. So this is, so we're about 35 minutes to, so by 12:40, we'll be back. It's up to you. I'm not breaking you out into sections.